Welcome back, dear listeners, to another story of betrayal, pride, and ultimate revenge. Tonight's tale begins with a man who thought he had everything under control until one public humiliation changed everything. Sit back, relax, and let me tell you what happened. My name is Daniel. I was 29, working as a software consultant, and recovering from a fractured leg after a nasty car accident. My fiancée, Claire, had stood by me during my recovery, or so I thought. She worked at a prestigious firm, and her boss, Richard, was not only the CEO but also one of the most arrogant men I had ever encountered. Richard was wealthy, confident, and known for his extravagant lifestyle. He thrived on power and attention, and while most people treated him with respect or fear, he had no reason to. To me, he was just my fiancée's boss, or at least, that's how it began. One evening, Claire invited me to her company's annual gala. I arrived on crutches, determined to support her despite my injury. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, fine wine, and the sharp scent of expensive cologne. I could already feel the eyes on me, people whispering about the man hobbling in beside Claire. And then it happened. Richard, dressed in a tailored black suit, took the stage with his booming voice. He praised his employees, toasted to another successful year, and then his eyes found mine. A sly smile spread across his face as he called Claire up beside him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard announced, raising his glass, "I want to take a moment to recognize Claire not just for her hard work, but for her beauty and grace." I clapped politely, but unease tightened my chest. His tone wasn't professional, it was personal. And then, in front of hundreds of employees, Richard turned to Claire, dropped to one knee, and pulled out a diamond ring so large it sparkled under every chandelier. "Claire," he said loudly, "why waste your life with a useless boyfriend stuck on crutches? Marry me instead, and I'll give you the world." The room gasped. Glasses clinked. Some people even cheered, though most stood frozen in awkward silence. My hands clenched around my crutches. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break my ribs. Did he really just humiliate me in front of everyone? Claire's face went pale. She looked at me, then at Richard, and back at me again. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She just stood there, trembling, caught between loyalty and temptation, and me. I felt the ground disappear beneath me. The humiliation didn't end there. Richard rose from his knee with a smirk, slid the ring back into his pocket, and whispered just loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Think about it, Claire. You deserve better than dead weight." The crowd erupted into uneasy murmurs. My cheeks burned. My fiancée looked like a deer caught in headlights, unable to defend me. And Richard, he walked away like he'd just won a battle. That night, on the ride home, Claire was silent. I asked her why she didn't shut him down immediately. She said, softly, "Daniel, you have to understand, he's powerful. He controls my career. I didn't want to embarrass him in front of everyone." Embarrass him? What about me? Her words cut deeper than Richard's insults. For the first time, I realized that my fiancée's loyalty wasn't as strong as I thought. As I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, anger boiled in my chest. I wasn't useless. I wasn't weak. And no arrogant CEO was going to take my dignity away. But I didn't lash out. Not yet. Instead, I began to think, to plan. If Richard thought I was useless, then I'd show him exactly how wrong he was. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. And that, dear listeners, is where we leave part 1. The public humiliation has been set, the cracks in trust are showing, and our narrator has just begun to realize that revenge may be the only way forward. But what happens when Claire starts drifting closer to her powerful CEO boss? And what steps will Daniel take to prove he's far from useless? The days after the gala were suffocating. I couldn't shake Richard's smug voice out of my head. "Why waste your life with a useless boyfriend stuck on crutches?" Claire tried to carry on as if nothing had happened. She cooked, asked about my recovery, and went to work like normal. But I could feel the distance widening between us. Every time her phone buzzed, she'd rush to check it. Every time she left the house, she dressed sharper, more carefully put together than before. And every time I asked, "Who's texting you?" or "Why are you late?" she'd brush me off with the same reply, "It's just work." "Daniel, don't be paranoid." But paranoia had nothing to do with it. I knew in my gut something was wrong. One evening, I confronted her, "Claire, at the gala. You didn't reject him. You didn't defend me. Why?" She sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. "Because, Daniel, you don't understand what's at stake. Richard isn't just some guy. He's my boss. He could ruin my career if I humiliate him publicly." "Your career? What about us?" "About me," I demanded. She looked away. "You're injured. You're not the same right now. I feel like I'm carrying everything: finances, stability, the future. Richard, he makes me feel like I'm not alone in this. Her words hit harder than any physical blow. In her eyes, I wasn't her partner anymore. I was a burden. The weeks dragged on, each day heavier than the last. Claire started working late more often. She started avoiding intimacy, offering excuses that piled up higher than the stack of dishes in the sink. And then one night, when she thought I was asleep, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice was soft, almost giddy. "Yes, Richard, I'll see you tomorrow. Don't worry. Daniel won't suspect anything." I gripped my pillow so tightly my knuckles turned white. My fiancée, the woman I planned to marry, was slipping through my fingers. All because of that arrogant CEO. But here's the thing. Richard thought humiliating me made me weak. Claire thought leaning on him made her stronger. What they didn't realize was that they had just lit a fire inside me, a fire that would burn hotter and brighter than either of them could. Imagine. I started gathering information. While Claire thought I was recovering quietly at home, I was networking. Old contacts from university, former colleagues, friends in finance, they all became my silent allies. I learned about Richard's company, his habits, his weaknesses. Turns out, the man who strutted around like a king had skeletons rattling loudly in his closet. Unethical deals, shady offshore accounts, workplace harassment complaints swept under the rug. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got, and the more determined I became. Still, I played my part at home. I acted calm, supportive, almost naive. When Claire left for her late nights at the office, I smiled and wished her well. Inside, though, I was already building the first threads of my revenge. And then came the turning point. One Friday evening, Claire didn't come home at all. No calls, no texts, nothing. At dawn, she stumbled through the door, smelling of whiskey and expensive cologne that wasn't mine. She avoided my eyes, muttered an excuse about celebrating with colleagues, and went straight to bed. That was it. The confirmation I needed. She wasn't just emotionally leaning on Richard anymore. She had crossed the line. But instead of exploding in anger, I smiled. Because now, my plan had clarity. Now, I wasn't just going to prove Richard wrong. I was going to dismantle him piece by piece. When Claire would see exactly who was useless and who was unstoppable. And so, part 2 ends here. The betrayal has deepened, the relationship is crumbling, and Daniel, once humiliated, is now quietly arming himself with knowledge and connections. But how exactly will he strike back against a powerful CEO who thinks he's untouchable? That, my friends, is where part 3 begins. After that night when Claire came home reeking of whiskey and another man's cologne, I felt something inside me shift. The heartbreak was sharp, yes, but beneath it was a cold, calculated calm. I realized anger alone wouldn't fix this. If I wanted to win, I couldn't shout. I couldn't beg. I couldn't cry. I had to outthink them. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my crutches leaned against the wall. Richard's words echoed again. Why waste your life with a useless boyfriend stuck on crutches? That's when it hit me. Richard underestimated me. And underestimation is the greatest gift an enemy can give you. I began assembling a plan piece by piece, like a puzzle only I could see. Step 1. Gather information. I already had some dirt from old contacts, but now I needed evidence. Hard, undeniable proof. Step 2. Build alliances. I couldn't take Richard down alone, but if I could find the people he had stepped on, exploited, or betrayed, I'd have an army waiting for the right moment. Step 3. Set the trap. Richard's ego was his weakness. If I played my cards right, I could make him walk straight into his own downfall. So, while Claire was busy working her late nights, I was busy working mine. During the day, I continued my recovery, strengthening my leg, slowly moving from crutches to a cane. At night, I made calls, sent emails, and sifted through documents. And the things I found shocked even me. Richard had funneled company funds into personal luxuries, private jets, vacation homes, gambling debts hidden in offshore accounts. He manipulated employees, promising promotions in exchange for favors. He silenced complaints with hush money and threats. He wasn't just arrogant, he was corrupt. One evening, I met up with Sarah, a former employee who had resigned after Richard harassed her. She had evidence emails, messages, even recordings. Another contact, Mike, an accountant who had quietly left the firm, provided financial records Richard thought were buried. Each piece of information became a weapon. Each conversation added fuel to my fire. And the best part, none of them had any loyalty to Richard. They hated him. They wanted justice. And I was more than happy to lead the charge, but I knew I couldn't reveal my hand too early. Richard was powerful. If he caught even a whiff of my plan, he'd crush me before I could move. So I played the role of the broken fiancé at home. I let Claire believe I was clueless. I listened to her lies about office dinners and networking events. I smiled when she claimed she was working late, even as I knew whose arms she was running into, and every time she underestimated me, I grew stronger. The turning point came when I received a message from one of my contacts in Richard's company. "You didn't hear this from me," it said, "but Richard is planning a massive announcement at the upcoming investors meeting. He's going to present falsified numbers to secure millions in new funding." That was it. The crack I needed if I could expose him at that very meeting in front of his board, his investors, his employees. His employees wouldn't just bruise his ego. I'd destroy his empire. I sat alone that night, staring at my laptop, the evidence files neatly organized. My hands shook not from fear, but from anticipation. For weeks I had been gathering, planning, preparing. Now, the pieces were finally coming together. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. About showing Claire, Richard, and the entire world that I wasn't useless. And when the time came, I'd make sure Richard fell from his throne in the most public, humiliating way possible. And so, Part 3 ends here. Daniel has gathered allies, uncovered Richard's corruption, and spotted the perfect opportunity to strike. The trap is set. The only question is, will it spring cleanly, or will Richard see it coming? Join me next time for Part 4, where the plan begins to unfold, and the first cracks appear in Richard's kingdom. The day of Richard's big investors meeting arrived. Like the calm before a storm. Claire had been buzzing for weeks about the event. She was one of the coordinators, working late almost every night, glowing with excitement. Or maybe it wasn't excitement, maybe it was pride. Pride at being the CEO's favorite. Either way, she thought it was going to be Richard's crowning moment. But I knew better, because while Richard was busy polishing his fake numbers and practicing his smug smile, I was working behind the scenes with Sarah and Mike, the former employees who had given me all the ammunition I needed. Together, we built a presentation that mirrored Richard's. Only ours had the truth, the real numbers, the fraudulent transactions, and the personal indulgences Richard had buried under business expenses. All we needed was the right stage. On the morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully. My leg was stronger now, no more crutches, just a discreet cane. As I looked in the mirror, a wave of satisfaction hit me. Weeks ago, I was humiliated, broken, underestimated. Today, I was ready. Claire noticed my suit. "You're going somewhere?" she asked casually, sipping her coffee. "Yes," I replied smoothly. "I have a meeting of my own." She didn't press further. Maybe she didn't care, or maybe she thought she already knew the outcome of our story. Either way, I smiled. She had no idea what was coming. The investors' meeting was held at a luxury hotel ballroom, the same place where Richard had once humiliated me. As I walked in, the atmosphere was buzzing. Wealthy investors, board members, and employees filled the room. Cameras were set up. Press was present. Richard took the stage like a king returning to his court. Claire was seated near the front, glowing as if she was part of his empire. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard boomed, "today marks the beginning of a new chapter for our company." His presentation began. Flashy slides, impressive figures, promises of growth that glittered as brightly as the chandeliers above. The crowd leaned in, nodding, whispering with excitement. But I saw the lies. Every chart, every projection, every claim. I knew the truth behind them. And soon, everyone else would too. When Richard finished, applause thundered through the room. He stood tall, smug, basking in his illusion of success. That was when I stood. The cane tapped against the marble floor as I walked toward the stage. Heads turned, murmurs rippled. Claire's eyes widened when she saw me, confusion flashing across her face. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But before anyone makes decisions based on Richard's presentation, there are some truths you need to see." Richard's smile faltered. "What is this? Who let you in here?" The projector flickered. My allies, working quietly in the tech booth, switched the slides, and then, slide by slide, Richard's empire crumbled before everyone's eyes. The fraudulent accounts, the siphoned funds, the harassment complaints buried under payouts, the vacations, the gambling debts, the luxury cars all funded by investors' money. Gasps filled the room. Phones came out. People whispered furiously, some already making calls. Richard rushed forward, shouting, "This is slander, lies, none of this is true." But the evidence was too solid. Dates, signatures, records, it was all there. And then came the final slide, an audio recording of Richard himself. boasting to an associate about how easy it was to manipulate his board and investors. His own words echoed through the speakers, sealing his fate. The room erupted into chaos. Investors stormed out, some demanding immediate meetings with their lawyers. Employees exchanged looks of shock and betrayal. Claire sat frozen, her hands trembling, and Richard, he stood pale, sweating, his mask of confidence shattered. "You," he hissed at me, pointing with a shaking finger, "you'll regret this. You think you've won." I leaned closer, so only he could hear me. "This isn't the end, Richard. It's just the beginning." As security escorted me out, I didn't resist. I had done what I came to do. The seed was planted. Richard's empire was cracking. And the best part, this was only the first strike. Because revenge isn't about a single blow. It's about watching your enemy unravel, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. And that, listeners, is where part 4 ends. The first stage of Daniel's revenge has been unleashed, leaving Richard exposed in front of the very people he sought to impress. But what happens when the consequences start rolling in investigations and betrayals from within his own circle? And where does Claire stand when her boss and her fiancé collide head to head? Join me for part 5, where the final act of revenge comes to light. The days following the investors' meeting were chaos for Richard's company. News outlets picked up the story almost immediately, blazed with words like fraud, corruption, scandal. Investors pulled out in droves. The stock price plummeted. Employees quit in waves. And Richard, he was drowning. I watched from the sidelines as the empire he built on arrogance and deceit collapsed. Each morning brought another revelation, another lawsuit, another blow to his carefully constructed image. But for me, this wasn't just about watching him fall. It was about delivering the final strike, the one that would leave no chance of recovery. Claire, meanwhile, was caught in the crossfire. She came home one evening, her face pale, her voice shaky. "Daniel, how could you do this? You ruined him. You ruined everything." I looked at her calmly. "I didn't ruin him, Claire. He ruined himself. I just made sure the truth came out." Tears welled in her eyes. "Do you realize what this means for me? My career, my future, it's all tied to him. And now it's over." Her words stung, but they also told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't worried about justice. She wasn't worried about loyalty. She was worried about losing the benefits of being close to Richard. At that moment, I realized she had already chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. But I wasn't done yet. Through my contacts, I discovered Richard was trying to salvage what little control he had left. He planned to liquidate assets quickly, transfer money into hidden accounts, and disappear before the lawsuits could freeze his funds. That was my chance. With the evidence I'd gathered, plus a few well-placed calls to regulators and journalists, I made sure his plan failed spectacularly. The moment he tried to move funds, investigators were waiting. Accounts were frozen. His name was plastered across every financial watchdog's report. Richard wasn't just humiliated anymore, he was trapped. The final confrontation came a week later. I was leaving a cafe when I saw him. No tailored suit this time, no smug grin, just a broken man in a wrinkled shirt, his eyes bloodshot, his confidence gone. He limped toward me, his voice hoarse. "You think you've won, don't you? You think this makes you a man?" I steadied my cane, looked him dead in the eye, and replied, "No, Richard. What makes me a man is not letting arrogant bullies destroy me and walk away smiling. You called me useless. Tell me who looks useless now." His jaw clenched, but he had no answer. He just walked away, shoulders slumped, the fight drained from him. That was the last time I ever saw him. As for Claire, she tried to salvage our relationship, but by then, there was nothing left to save. "You've changed," she said one night, almost pleading. "You're colder now, harder. I don't recognize you." I shook my head. "No, Claire, I haven't changed. I just stopped letting people walk over me. You wanted security, power, and glamour. I wanted loyalty, and now we both know where we stand." We broke off the engagement shortly after. She left, chasing whatever pieces of her career she could salvage, while I walked away with something far more valuable than her approval: my dignity. Months later, Richard's company was dismantled. He faced multiple charges, his reputation in ruins, his fortune stripped away. Meanwhile, I built something new, my own consulting firm, forged from the connections I had re-established during my plan. And this time, I wasn't underestimated. People saw me for what I truly was: resilient, sharp, and unbreakable. So, dear listeners, here's the moral of tonight's tale. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never mistake injury for defeat. And never ever call someone useless unless you're prepared to see just how powerful they can become when pushed to the edge. I wasn't useless. I was underestimated. And that mistake cost Richard everything. And that concludes our story. Justice was served, betrayal was exposed, and the man once called useless walked away stronger than ever. Until next time, remember, revenge isn't always about rage. Sometimes, it's about patience, precision, and letting your enemy destroy themselves. And that brings us to the end of today's story. What do you think? Did justice find its way home? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of betrayal and revenge, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next story. This is Revenge with Arion, where every ending reminds us, karma always arrives, right on.